The courtroom was already overflowing long before the judge entered. Journalists filled the back rows, whispering about the high-profile corporate lawsuit that had captured headlines for weeks. Lawyers arranged thick files across polished wooden desks while executives exchanged anxious glances. Every seat was occupied, and even the hall outside buzzed with reporters waiting for a single dramatic moment. At the center of the case sat Daniel Carter, a self-made businessman whose company had grown from a tiny repair shop into one of the country's most respected manufacturing firms. Years of relentless work had built his reputation, but one legal battle now threatened to erase everything. If the court ruled against him, he would lose not only his company, but also the livelihoods of hundreds of employees who depended on it. Daniel barely noticed the noise around him. His eyes remained fixed on the stack of documents before him, though he hadn't read a single page in the last 10 minutes. Sleep had become a stranger. Every conversation with his attorneys ended with uncertainty, and every headline seemed to predict his downfall. 15 years earlier, life had looked very different. Back then, Daniel wasn't known as a successful entrepreneur. He was simply a widowed father struggling to rebuild his life after losing his wife to a sudden illness. His small son had also passed away only months later after a severe medical condition, leaving Daniel completely alone. The quiet house that once echoed with laughter became painfully silent, and every evening felt longer than the last. Friends urged him to move on, but grief doesn't follow a schedule. Daniel buried himself in work, hoping that long hours would drown painful memories. Instead, the emptiness followed him everywhere. One cold autumn evening, while driving home after another exhausting day, heavy rain forced traffic to crawl through the city streets. As he waited at a red light near an abandoned railway station, he noticed a young homeless girl sitting beneath a broken shelter. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her clothes were soaked, and she hugged a worn backpack as if it contained everything she owned. Most drivers looked away when the light changed. Daniel almost did the same. Yet something in the frightened determination on the girl's face reminded him of the loneliness he carried every day. Without realizing it, he pulled his car to the side of the road, stepped into the rain, and walked toward the child, a decision that would quietly reshape both of their lives forever. Daniel crouched beside the frightened girl, careful not to startle her. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the broken shelter, soaking both of them. For a few moments, neither spoke. The little girl tightened her grip on her faded backpack, watching him with the cautious eyes of someone who had learned not to trust strangers. "I'm Daniel," he said softly. "Are you hungry?" She hesitated before giving the smallest nod. Without asking any more questions, Daniel led her to a nearby diner that was still open despite the storm. The warmth inside seemed unfamiliar to her. She stood awkwardly near the entrance until the waitress welcomed them with a smile. When a bowl of hot soup and fresh bread arrived, the girl stared at the food for several seconds before taking the first bite. She ate slowly, trying not to appear desperate, but Daniel could tell she hadn't had a proper meal in days. "My name is Lily," she finally whispered. As they talked, Daniel learned that Lily had lost both of her parents within a year. After being passed from one distant relative to another, she eventually ran away from a house where she was treated like a burden instead of a child. Since then, abandoned buildings and bus stations had become her shelter. Daniel spent the next several days contacting child welfare offices, shelters, and local charities. Every place was overcrowded, and none could promise Lily a stable home. One official quietly admitted that she might spend years moving through temporary foster placements before anyone considered adopting her. That answer troubled Daniel more than he expected. He began bringing Lily meals every evening. Slowly, her fear faded. She smiled more often, asked questions about books she saw in his car, and admitted she dreamed of becoming a lawyer because, in her words, lawyers help people who have no one else. One evening, as Daniel prepared to leave, Lily handed him a small, folded piece of paper. It was a simple drawing of 3 people holding hands beneath a bright sun. Above them, she had written in careful handwriting, A family doesn't have to start together to stay together. Daniel stared at the drawing for a long moment. For the first time since losing his own family, the emptiness inside his heart felt just a little less overwhelming. That night, after hours of quiet reflection, he made the life-changing decision to begin the legal process of adopting Lily, unaware that the little girl he was saving would one day become the person who would save him. The years passed more quickly than either of them expected. The frightened little girl who had once hidden behind an old backpack gradually grew into a confident young woman with quiet determination. Lily never forgot the rainy evening when Daniel had offered her a warm meal instead of walking away like everyone else. To her, that moment wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the day she was given a second chance at life. Daniel kept his promise to be there for every important milestone. He attended every school play, every parent-teacher meeting, every graduation ceremony, and every achievement, no matter how busy business became. While many successful entrepreneurs measured wealth by profits and investments, Daniel secretly believed his greatest success was hearing Lily call him Dad with complete certainty. Lily excelled in school, particularly in literature, history, and civics. Her teachers admired not only her intelligence, but also her willingness to defend classmates who were bullied or treated unfairly. Whenever someone was too afraid to speak, Lily somehow found the courage to stand beside them. Daniel noticed the pattern long before she did. During her final year of high school, she volunteered at a legal aid center, organizing files and observing attorneys who provided free legal services to struggling families. Listening to their stories strengthened her childhood dream of becoming a lawyer. She realized that justice wasn't simply about winning arguments. It was about protecting people who had no power to protect themselves. Daniel supported her decision without hesitation. Although tuition at one of the country's top law schools was expensive, he considered it an investment in her future rather than a sacrifice. Lily studied tirelessly, earning scholarships that reflected both her academic excellence and unwavering dedication. Meanwhile, Daniel's company expanded into a nationally respected business. Hundreds of employees depended on it, and his reputation for honesty attracted loyal clients. Yet success also brought powerful rivals who disliked losing contracts to a businessman who refused bribery, manipulation, or dishonest shortcuts. One evening, after Lily completed her law degree with honors, they celebrated quietly over dinner at home. Daniel looked at her with unmistakable pride. "You've become everything I hoped you would," he said. Lily smiled warmly before answering, "Everything I am started the day you chose to believe in a homeless little girl." Neither of them realized that those words would soon carry far greater meaning, because a legal battle was approaching that would test not only Daniel's business, but the strength of the family they had built together. The courtroom remained silent as everyone waited for the judge's final decision. Daniel sat motionless beside his legal team, his hands tightly clasped together. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and honest business practices seemed to rest on a single ruling. Across the room, the executives who had accused him appeared confident, believing they had already secured victory. Just before closing arguments, Lily rose from her seat. Although she had recently become a licensed attorney, she spoke with remarkable confidence. She requested permission to submit newly discovered evidence that had not been available during the earlier stages of the trial. After reviewing the request, the judge allowed her to proceed. Lily calmly displayed a series of financial records, security logs, and authenticated email archives. Instead of making emotional accusations, she carefully explained how several documents presented by the opposing side had been altered before reaching the court. She then called an independent digital forensic expert whose analysis confirmed that timestamps had been manipulated and electronic signatures had been copied onto forged files. As each piece of evidence was examined, the courtroom atmosphere changed. The opposing lawyers struggled to explain the inconsistencies. Their key witness contradicted his own earlier testimony and under further questioning admitted that he had signed documents without verifying their authenticity. The confidence that had filled the other side slowly disappeared. After a brief recess, the judge returned with the verdict. The lawsuit against Daniel was dismissed in its entirety. The court ruled that the allegations had been built on fabricated evidence and ordered an investigation into those responsible for attempting to mislead the court. A wave of relief swept across the courtroom. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, grateful that the truth had finally prevailed. When he looked toward Lily, she smiled with quiet pride. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around them, eager to hear Daniel's reaction. Instead of talking about business or victory, he placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. 15 years ago, he said softly, I offered a homeless little girl a home because it felt like the right thing to do. Today, she reminded the world that kindness never disappears. It grows, it returns, and sometimes it arrives exactly when you need it most. Lily's eyes filled with tears as they walked away together, not as a businessman and a lawyer, but as a father and daughter whose greatest success had always been finding each other.